Alrighty, let's talk hockey. The hockeydebates.com podcast is right now. Welcome to the 21st day in the 21st year of the 21st century. And our guest today, if we were playing blackjack, would be a winning hand. It's Ken Campbell from the Hockey News. So welcome aboard, Ken.
Thanks for having me, guys.
And as always, of course, joined by my esteemed Hall of Fame co-host, Kevin Allen. I'll let you have the first question, Kevin.
Thanks. Ken, let's dive right in. The All-Canadian Division, we were eagerly anticipating this. I know we all pretty much thought it was going to be wide open, and it's been exactly that. Has it been all that you wanted it to be in the first week?
Yeah, I think it's been pretty intriguing. You know, I've been keeping up with all the games and watching most of the games, and I think it's really anybody's division to take. I'm a little surprised that the Vancouver Canucks didn't get off to a better start, although they did manage to salvage a shootout win last night against Montreal. And speaking of surprises, I'm surprised Montreal has been as good as they've been, and until last night when the Oilers beat Toronto 3-1, I was kind of wondering about where they were going and what their identity was going to be. And even Ottawa. I mean, Ottawa's been really, like, they're in games, right? Like they're not going to be an easy out, and I mean, they seem to think that they, can challenge for a playoff spot, and maybe they can. I don't think many people saw it before the season started, but I think it's a division with a bunch of good teams, and there's no one great team in this division, in my opinion. In my opinion, there's not a legitimate, serious Stanley Cup contender, a la the Colorado Avalanche, Vegas Golden Knights, Tampa Bay Lightning, Boston Bruins, that kind of thing. I don't see that. I see some real flaws in pretty well every team in this division that I think prevents it from being one of those really serious contending teams. But there's a lot of good teams in this division.
I mean, you look at the Oilers, and the one thing you didn't think they'd have a problem with would be putting the puck in the net. But going into the Toronto game, they were 0 for 12 on the power play. McDavid's got 3 goals, but they're all in one game, and he hasn't scored in the last 3. Why isn't this team scoring?
Well, I think it comes from good defense leads to good offense, and their defensive commitment before last night. I mean, they were really good defensively last night. Before last night was really, really lacking, like astonishingly so. And to me, you're trying to change perceptions here a little bit, right? Like the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Edmonton Oilers are trying to change people's perceptions of them and how they play the game. So you might want to come out and actually, do that at the beginning of the year. And I don't think the Edmonton Oilers were doing that. And I think they're really skittish about their goaltending. I worry about that goaltending. I mean, Kevin, you've known, and for that matter, Bob, you guys have known Ken Holland for a long time, and you know what a quality GM he is. I was, for one, was really surprised that he didn't do anything to upgrade the most important spot and the biggest spot that was lacking on that Edmonton team. So I think maybe they're just a little skittish about maybe trying to opening things up too much, because they are sort of conscious of the fact that they're not a very good defensive team, and their goaltending isn't that good.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, go ahead, Bob.
I said, do you think maybe Holland decided after Markstrom was gone that there wasn't really anybody out there that was worth the money?
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, it was a bit of a buyer's market. There were a lot of guys out there, and a lot of guys who ended up changing teams. And I don't know. I mean, sometimes a change is as good as an upgrade for you. And I just thought that kind of screamed for somebody to come in and say, we're going to give this guy a chance to be the guy that carries the ball here.
Yeah, I think they were definitely in on some goaltenders, but when the music stopped, they were the one without a chair. They didn't get a goalie, and I think they're probably going to regret that, to be honest. In that division, if you start ranking goalies, I think they're last in that division in terms of where their goaltending is. But I want to move to another division out west and talk a little bit about the Vegas Golden Knights. This is a team that you could say they had a tumultuous off season. They alienated some fans, the Marc-Andre Fleury lovers, some of his teammates. They alienated some of the general managers around the league with how they were handling their trade negotiations. But here we are, a week into the season. They're the only 4-0 team. I've watched them play a couple of games. And last year, I thought Stone tied their offense nicely together. And now Peter Angelo, even though he hasn't been exceptional, I see him tying their defense together. Now they look as good a contender as there is in the league.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I checked today, Mark Stone's he's played more games than everybody else, but he's in first place in NHL scoring with 7 points. You're right, Kevin. It was a kind of a weird off season for the Golden Knights. I mean, they go out and get Pietrangelo, and then they have to start, unloading guys. So they lose Nate Schmidt, and you sort of wonder where they're going. I was told that Marc-Andre Fleury is on board and he's fine. He's not going to be he's not too upset about this. He understands. So I guess we'll take the Vegas Golden Knights at their word when they tell us that. But I mean, this is a team that I think, with the personnel they have, there's an expectation level there that this team is going to get it done at some point, now or in the near future. And now like Vegas is, every time a player becomes available, it's like Vegas is almost the default destination or the desired destination. So, I mean, they're really solid and they're solid up and down the lineup. They don't have any holes. They've got a lot of depth at forward. They've got a lot of depth on defense. They got a ton of depth in goal, and they're in a division where, they're playing Arizona 4 times. They played them twice already, and they got them 2 more. They could conceivably be 6-0 after that. They're in a division that's a pretty soft touch, in my opinion. I mean, there's St. Louis, Colorado, and Vegas, and then then after that, it's a pretty weak field after that.
Yeah, we had Eric Stevens from The Athletic, who covers the Ducks, on Tuesday, and we talked about that. And you've already penciled in St. Louis, Colorado, and Vegas into playoff spots, and then probably Minnesota 4th. But really, after them, there's not a whole lot of what you'd call high-end talent.
Yeah, it's not to me, it's definitely the weakest of the 4 divisions. And I think, it's really going to help Vegas to play all year in that division, and then to go through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs in that division as well. And then you're in the final 4 after that. So, whereas a team in the East, you look at the East, it's a good team is missing the playoffs. It's as simple as that. There's going to be a really good team that misses the playoffs. And then you're going to have to go through 2 rounds of that again by the time you get to the semifinals. So, I think Vegas has a real opportunity to really make some hay here.
Kenny, I'm going to continue to drag you around the horn a little bit. Let's run over to the revamped Central Division, where we have the Chicago Blackhawks, minus Kirby Dach, minus Jonathan Taves, and giving up 20 goals in their first 4 games. They didn't go out and get a goaltender. I wonder if the newly promoted Stan Bowman has any regrets about that. If there's anything this team could use right now, it'd be a veteran goalie.
Yeah, they went into the season with Colin Delia and Malcolm Subban, which I think universally was regarded as the worst goaltending tandem in the league. Now they're trying, they're going to see if Kevin Lankinen can help them. But you're not giving yourself much of a chance when, I'm more and more convinced as I watch and see more and more hockey that, goaltending can make coaches really bad, and it can make coaches really good. It's remarkable how much of an impact goaltending has on a coach's sort of fortunes. And this goaltending just isn't high enough caliber. You know, and it's a team that gives up a lot of chances. Like, they're not a good defensive team. They don't nail things down. They're not, you know, there's not a lot of structure there. There's not a lot of NHL talent there. It really drops off after the top six. So for, you know, a third of the game, you've got guys out there that are really, you know, sort of suspect defensively. You know, that I think there's a real challenge ahead in Chicago. I mean, if they finish last this year, maybe they get Owen Power, which is a nice little consolation prize. And if they can keep it going, maybe they get Shane Wright, and then you've got two pieces there to become a Stanley Cup contender again.
I think of the famous Ric Flair saying, you know, to be the best, you got to beat the best. We got Chicago and Detroit playing twice this weekend. I'm thinking it's the reverse of that. You know, to be the worst, you got to lose to the worst. Because I'm looking at Chicago and I'm seeing, you know, other than if they didn't have Patrick Kane, you're looking at last year's Red Wings. I mean, half the roster looks like it shouldn't be in the NHL.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, credit to the Red Wings. They've played hard. Like they look like something's happening there. You know, I mean, it looks like they're starting to turn the corner as well in Detroit, which is always a good thing to see. But yeah, I think Chicago right now is you know, is definitely the front runner for, you know, the top odds in the lottery without.
Kenny, Boston 5-on-5 has looked anemic to me. Should we worry about the Bruins making the playoffs? I mean, they still have Tuukka Rask. Their defense, even after losing Chara, McAvoy is an up-and-comer. You know, they've got Carlo. They've got players as well. But, boy, they sure feel like they've taken a half step backwards.
Yeah, they do. They really do. I mean, I think the Chara subtraction is one that is probably going to be a bigger one than people might have realized. You know, I mean, he's been pretty good for Washington so far. He's eaten up a lot of minutes. He's a plus player. He's what he wanted to be in Boston. Yeah, I think they've taken a step back. I think, you know, I mean, they're going to get Pasternak back at some point, I think in next month. So that'll help. You know, but this is a team that is, you know, on like these guys. I mean, Brad Marchand is in his 30s. Patrice Bergeron's in his 30s. They have an older group here that, you know, I mean, especially in a season where you're playing every other night, you're playing 3 and 4 sometimes, you're playing, you know, 16 games a month. You know, this is gonna wear some guys down, and you're gonna need that depth at all positions to overcome it. And I mean, the Bruins have a lot of top end talent, but yeah, I mean, they have been. It's been a bit weird to see them this incapable of scoring 5-on-5. Like it really seems strange to me.
Well, you talk about that division and teams missing the playoffs. So the news out of Washington that Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, Samsonov, and Orlov are going to be in COVID protocol sounds like for a week. I mean,
yeah,
that's a bunch of games they could lose. That, you know, and as you say, there's 5. I'd say there's 6 really good teams in the East, and, you know, every point's going to be massive. I mean, whatever happened, and, you know, it seems like we're not getting the full story. I can't imagine league fining a team $100,000 just because 4 guys got together in a hotel room. There's got to be, you'd think, some other shoe that's going to drop here.
There might be, but I think also, even if it was just that, they've got to send a message here. Like, this is not something that you can screw around with. And, you know, I mean, I see that they've been put on the COVID list, which means they're all out for at least 4 games. Samsonov probably longer because he actually has COVID. The other guys, I don't think, have tested positive for it. But, you know, when I first heard about this and I thought, okay, well, the league's fining them $100,000 and everybody was like, oh, wow, they mean business. It was like, no, you can't. Like, $100,000 is nothing. You've got to make a statement with these guys. And I think they have by putting them on that COVID-19 list and basically declaring them ineligible for the next 4 games. Because, you know, I think that if you're not going to comply with the COVID protocols, or you're going to ignore them, or you're going to, you're going to flout them, then you should be losing games. You should be losing draft picks. You should be losing money. This is something they have to take very, very seriously. And I'm glad to see that they have done that, because I mean, we're walking around on eggshells here. What are we at? 10 postponed games already?
Yeah.
And I'm not terribly surprised. Like I kind of figured that was going to happen, but it's one thing to mess up. It's one thing to trip up. And I mean, Carolina, we don't know why it got into their locker room, but it did. And so you say, okay, well, these things happen. But when you know what the protocols are, when your team is always telling you what the protocols are, when it's being drilled into your head every day, even if it isn't anything more than them just getting together in the hotel room, then you're just basically ignoring them. You're just ignoring them. And for your captain to do that and a veteran guy to do that, these guys are all veterans. They're not young guys. They're not, they know what's at stake here. And they've let down their teammates. Without question, they've let down their teammates in their organization by doing this. And I for one, think that the NHL made the right call by putting these guys on the COVID-19 list and saying, you guys can sit in your hotel room and think about what you did for a couple of games.
Kenny, you're right on this. This is the NHL version of the Denver Broncos when, the quarterbacks on that team didn't wear masks. One of them got COVID, so they made the Broncos play with a wide receiver as their quarterback. This is similar. They're going to lose their captain. Their goalie is out now, and they're setting a tone. And you're right. This is different than the Stars in Carolina, where they don't know why they've got it. In this case, it was a flaunting of the rules. We got to let you go. We're running out of time here, but just quick as you're running out the door, I've said going in is that one of the dangers of this unique schedule is we might like it too much. And my thought is that maybe something out of this will carry forward. I don't believe we'll play 56 games, and I don't believe we're going to have an all-Canadian division. No. But I'm wondering if people are going to like this baseball style series. Give me a thumbs up or thumbs down on how you feel about, the fact that Vegas is going to play Arizona like 4 consecutive times, home and away, 2-2.
Yeah. And we had our podcast the other day, and somebody said, "Are you sick of seeing the same teams play each other again, all over, or sort of repeatedly?" And I'm not. I mean, I get it. Like I'm not. I get that I'm sort of in the camp that I'm kind of just happy we've got this thing going. And for me, okay, so Vegas is playing Anaheim 4 times, but I was counting, there's 116 nights in this season, and I think in 100 of them, there's at least 5 games. And at least there's 5 games in 100 of those nights, of the 116 nights. There are some nights when there's 15 games. There's a couple of nights when there's 13, 12. I mean, if you don't like it, just find another game.
Yeah.
I mean,
sport's not for you. Yeah.
I think for me, it's kind of, for me, my biggest complaint right now is I'm maybe it's my ADD tendencies, but I just, there's so many games and I want to watch them all, and so I end up watching a little bit of everything, and then I miss a bunch of stuff. And to me, that's the worst part, is there's like too many games on TV. I'm not worried about who's playing against whom. I love the fact that there's hockey. I just wish I could see all of the games, and I can't.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's been highly entertaining, as you are as well, Ken. It's always a pleasure to have you. You're so insightful about the game. You've been at it a long time. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Anytime.
Right. Yep. Thanks a lot, Ken. We'll see you soon.
Enjoy.
That was Ken Campbell, obviously, of the Hockey News. Always good to have him as a guest. Not afraid to voice his opinion, Bob. And usually I find I don't always agree with him, but for the most part, I find his comments pointed and usually on point. So.
Yeah, I mean, he gets a lot of grief on social media, as we all do, but it seems like he becomes more of a lightning rod because, as you say, he's got opinions and he doesn't mind giving them. And whether I've always looked at opinions like have one. They don't sit on the fence. And doesn't, if I don't agree with you, that doesn't mean you're a bad guy or you're an idiot. It just means that we disagree.
Well, I remember years ago when Jim Rome started the popular national talk show. When the callers would call in, he'd say, "Have a take and don't suck." That's what he wanted, and that same is true today for a journalist. We grew up, you and I did, the who, what, where, and why, but now the business has evolved. Why is far more important, and what should we feel about it? The fan, the reader, now is asking us for a little assistance in formulating an opinion, and the way they do that is by us giving our opinion, which they can disagree with or take some of or all of it, and that's kind of the new journalism. That's kind of how it works. It's not always fun because, as you said, you write something at 5 o'clock and at 5:05, people are already yelling at you. But that's the way it is now. And maybe it was always like this, but we didn't know because we didn't have social media, to know that everybody was all wound up about everything. And the one thing I don't like, it does feel like we've moved away from, strictly enjoying sports to getting angry about them. I always have viewed sports as kind of an opiate of the masses, like drinking on Friday night or, relaxing at the beach, something to take your mind off, the everyday life. And sometimes now it doesn't feel like we do that we just get too, mad about everything to, see it as kind of a relaxation. But anyway, we're getting off the course here. I thought the Ken's take on Washington, as I said, was right on, and I do like, it's just so hard anyway when you're not in a bubble not to have somebody contract this, particularly now with new variations popping up that are more transmissible. It's going to happen. We talked about this before. You can be excited about the return of the NHL, but you have to accept that this stuff is going to happen. We saw it in the NFL. A lot of people were predicting, they're never going to get to the finish line. But guess what? We're going to get to the finish line, and we're one win away from a Super Bowl for some teams, and Tom Brady's still alive, and it just seems like business as usual with the NFL. And the same will be true of the NHL. Like, this seems ridiculous that the Washington Capitals have lost their number one goalie and their captain for who knows how long. But, we'll get through this, and, we're going to crown a champion at some point.
And you could argue this is going to be the biggest week of the season for the Capitals, because if they don't come out of these, 3 or 4 games where they're missing those 4 key players with some points, at the end of the season, they may look back on those 3 or 4 games as being the difference between going to the dance or going home.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what everyone's got to get their arms around. 11 games is 20% of your season. When you get to the 5-game mark, it's not quite 10%, but it's close. When you've played 5 games, you've played, close to 10% of your season. When you play 6, you've played more than 10% of your season. So, you break this down into 6-game segments, and the last one will only have, if my math is correct, 4 games in it. Ken Holland used to break the season down into 10-game segments, and he felt if you wanted to be a good team, you had to be at least 6-4, but better if you were 7-3. And now I think in this type of season, in these 6-game segments, you got to go 4-2, or risk falling out of it, because we've talked about this before, but 4-point games every night. Somebody's, when you're winning, when the other team's losing, and that's 2 more points they're not going to get. So, and it really has been like that Canadian division. I looked at the standings today, and it's just after the first week, it's just a jumble. Like, you got no idea. You're looking at that, and Calgary looks better than I expected. They've got credible goaltending. Edmonton's been a little bit of a disappointment, but they stepped up and got a big win last night. And as Kenny said, we all expected Ottawa to be better, but I'm a believer that some team that we're not counting on, someone within the ranks of the Buffalo Sabres, although probably not them, but Buffalo Sabres, Anaheim Ducks, Detroit Red Wings, LA Kings, all the teams that were in the bottom, among the bottom feeders last season, one of them I feel is going to make the playoffs, because this is such a unique format and it's a sprint, and anybody, and it seems to me like anybody can make the playoffs in 56 games. It's 82 games that separate it. The endurance aspect of it is gone.
And I got to give the league credit. I'm actually pleasantly surprised that they stayed with just 16 playoff teams, because it would have been so easy to say, in this unique situation where we're only playing 56 games, we're going to do the 24 teams again like we did last year. And I give them tons of credit for not falling into that, whatever you call it, a crutch of, because it would have just gutted the season. Really, you'd pretty much been able to say at the start of the season who probably 20 of the playoff teams would be. But now, and the fact that you're playing only in your division, and you got to beat those teams to get the spot. There's no wild card. I'm thinking every regulation win you can get this season is going to be massive, because you get 2 more points than that other team, and you don't give them that overtime or shootout point. In the long run, those are going to be massive victories.
Well, I was going to disagree with you about that. I had hoped they would expand the playoffs, but I think your point is a real good one with regard to the fact that it just, we would have been able to tell, like, what makes this season attractive. And I still disagree with a little bit, but I'll get back to that. But what your point that I think is important is, what's fun is the fact that we don't know whether the Bruins or the Penguins now are going to make the playoffs, because only 4 is going to get in, and as you just mentioned before, that's such a good division. Some good teams are not going to get in there, and now it's that's going to be the entertainment value of that division is that good teams are going to be eliminated. So that's good. However, saying all that, I would have loved to have seen to add to our entertainment value and experimentation with the what they used to call in wrestling the rat tail bracket, where you can sort of play in the play-in round, where the number 5 team, for example, challenged the 4 team in a winner-take-all game to get that 4th spot. I think you might as well do that and see if we like it. See if it has the same charm, the same mass appeal that we have in baseball. I think it would. I think, and I know all the arguments that it comes down to one game. It makes the regular season unimportant. I say the baloney. It's no different than now when sometimes we decide on the last day of the season who gets in the playoffs. Now we're just going to decide the day after the last game of the season. That's all. We're just going to move that 24 hours and play. And when we get back to regular play, an 83rd game. I really do want to see that. I love it the way it works in baseball. I know traditionally Gary Bettman is opposed to that. But I think over time, especially now that we're going to add Seattle for a 32nd team, and now 50% of the teams don't make the playoffs, I think it's time for us to include that extra in-between round, the play-in round, at some point when we get back to 82 games. I would have liked to see it this year, but I'm fine with the way it is.
I would, it would have been nice to see, I think they should do this, the tiebreaker. I always thought that, the fact that you win one more regulation game than the other team gets you in the playoffs or whatever, whatever tiebreaker it comes down to, just have them settle it on the ice. If 2 teams end up with the same points and are tied for the last playoff spot, have a game. They do that in the OHL. If 2 teams tie for the last playoff spot, they have a game, a sudden death game. So I think that would be a great idea rather than have a bunch of guys crunching numbers.
Tiebreakers, yeah.
Yeah.
No, a number of regulation wins. Yeah, yeah. I'm with you on that. Well, let me ask you this, because I've often wondered by this. When I discuss this, the first thing that always comes up from people is, well, it'd have to be a best of three. Why? Why does it have to be a best of three? Like, why is it that baseball was not afraid of a one-game playoff, winner take all? We certainly see that in football, because they don't really have the best of seven. So I don't know why we're so afraid of that. Do you have any thought on why we're afraid of a one-game winner take all? Because it's no different than, getting to a game seven. We're just having game seven and game one is all.
The biggest word I despise in sports is when someone says they're a purist, because if you go back in the history of any sport, you go back in the history of the NHL, they used to play 2-game total goals series in the playoffs. I mean, nothing more ridiculous than that. You lose the first game 7-1, you might as well just go home. It's why bother playing the second game?
Yeah.
So we've done a lot of stupid playoff formats over the years. I don't think a one game. People argue, well, what if a goalie gets hot and steals the game? Well, in baseball, what if your pitcher
throws a no hitter? Yeah,
he's lights out that day. It could be your fifth starter, but that's the day he's an ace, and it can happen in that sport. And in football, a quarterback can have the game of his life, and they already do play. Is there a playoffs that's more exciting than the NFL? I mean, one and done every round. I mean, why wouldn't you want to have that?
I don't get it either. I don't know why when I bring it up, particularly if you talk about it with a team official, a GM or a coach, say, well, I can see that, but best of three, it's like they're afraid of it. They're, they don't, I think I guess my impression is they think the longer you play, the better the chance the best team will win. So, a 7-game series. The idea is if you play 7, it's going to be the best team, not somebody who's lucky. Where if you play one game, their luck becomes a bigger factor. But then game 7 is luck then, and we love game 7s. So as I say, just think of game 7. It just is going to be in game 1. That's all. That's all we're doing here. If we go to a 1-game format, and I guarantee that game would be a ratings bonanza. You could charge Stanley Cup prices. If you're let's say Nashville and Florida tie, or Nashville gets fourth place in the Central, and Florida got to challenge them in a 1 game because they were 5th, and that game was in Nashville. Man, that place would be rocking. That place would be rocking if they had a 1-game knockout style in Nashville. And I don't care what you charge for tickets. It could be $200, and I think people would show up with the idea that, hey, we're going to see an elimination tonight.
I can see the team. They're probably worried about, if it's 1 game and we're not the home team, we don't get any gate receipts. That's probably what they're worried about. They're saying about the Wings used to call a 5-game series a Mike Ilitch sweep because they got 3 home games out of it.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think with this playoff, I don't know how they do it in baseball. I'd actually have to look that up. But, we can just call it, why don't we just split the gate receipts for 4 and 5? And the league would have to get their take as well, because that's how that works. Yeah, anyway, I think at some point we'll be headed in that direction. We'll have some sort of play-in round involving the 7th and 8th seeds or the 8th seed. It's just too many. 16 teams is too many teams to have out of the playoffs. That's my feeling on it. We had when we had 21 teams, we had 16 teams in the playoffs, and now we got 32. We used to have 5 out. Now we're going to have 16 out.
Yeah, well, you look at as I say, the NFL, and then probably the second most popular sporting event is the NCAA tournament. And they're both 1-and-done formats. So
yeah,
I don't know, you wouldn't want to go that way. But I don't know if we've won, but I know we're done because we're out of time. So This has been the Hockey Debates podcast. I'm Bob, and he's Kevin, and we will be back with you to talk more hockey on Tuesday. Everybody have a great day.